So I've started the recording. And Shawan, I'll hand it over to you. I've just been saying hello to people.
I'm just wondering, should we, people are still signing in and signing up. So maybe just give it a minute or two.
Sure. It's just the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Oh, look, there's Toyoko.
Yeah.
Toyoko, I love that.
Oh, Sangwon is here too.
That's a nice picture of Singwon.
Yeah.
Nice to see familiar faces. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon.
And good evening. It's the middle of the night for Aditya and Anita.
Chris just signed on, I think.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody.
Jim Stoner's there. Hi, Jim. Hello.
There.
Wow. Dr. Biberman, I hope you're happy. People are all here because of you. The attendance is amazing.
I don't know what to say.
Hi, Lisa.
Julia, how you doing?
Yeah, Vanessa. Oh, Regina. Regina Bento is here.
Regina, wow. Hi.
And Miriam. Hi, Chris. Hello, Paul. Paul, is that an Oregon beach behind you?
It's actually a California beach.
But you're in Oregon right now, right?
I am, but the background in the tiny home I'm staying in is much less attractive than this one. So,
Looks peaceful.
but those are my footsteps on the beach. I did take the picture.
Oh, that's so cool. Ah, Kathy King from Canada, one of my Edgewalker community. Hello, Kathy. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Good
Nice
morning.
to be here.
Good
Looking forward to a great conversation.
It will be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm having a good feeling that there are probably a couple more people joining in, which is a beautiful sign. Just so you know, I had such a beautiful day finally yesterday. I shared with the MSR Research Committee. I was pretty anxious walking into yesterday. Then I slept so well with smile on my face because I had a good conversation with my children. It turns out to be a peaceful and a meaningful transition. I hope it's a new beginning of something very good. So we are having this symposium the day after the inauguration day. So let's just remember this timing for us to remember, okay? We are having a wonderful session. You are here for a beautiful treat for sure. Give it 10 more seconds, then we will kick off.
And when we kick off, Shawan, please say who you are.
I will do that. I will absolutely do that. Thank you, Judi.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So one page is not good enough. We're on to the second page now. Wonderful.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get started. So Judi, if you haven't, I think you already start the recording process.
I did.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. My name is Xiao Andy. I'm a senior program officer at a private foundation in Michigan, the United States, the Fetzer Institute, who has been a fellow, really traveling along with management, spirituality, and religion, a special interest group within the Academy of Management. And it's my huge privilege to welcome you to our monthly offering and to spend some time with Dr. Biberman. I don't have to say too much, and most of you probably even heard of him or read his writing or otherwise yearning to meet him today. And he's a member on our Flamekeeper, the committee, like you said, is to hold the flame of management, spiritual, and religion by asking big and deep questions, by keep asking them. So in this case, Dr. Biberman, I get to work with him for several years now. Always honor and respect him, not just because he's one of the founders of MSR, the first chair of this interest group. It's more as a elder that I honor. I see him more or less like my father.
Oh, well.
I lost my father 8 years ago, and always reserved, always careful with his wording, but I learned by his embodiment of the value. I don't know, in this case, I will ask Judi to facilitate this session. Judi and Dr. Biberman worked so closely for so many years, and she can tell you a whole lot more about Dr. Biberman. But it is once again, just to welcome you. We want to make this very interactive. We will provide a lot of opportunity for you to speak with each other in small groups if we can do that. And also, let's use the chat area as much as we can. If at any point, any words or questions that you want to ask, because the name of this session, as you know, is really, let me just read this through again. Maybe Dr. Biberman can introduce. It's one of the most foundational questions for us as a field need to ask. Okay? So I think that's overall the idea. I don't know if Rachel is here now. We'd like to provide a opening in contemporary practices to help us get settled, centered, and grounded.
Yeah, I don't see
Richard's
Richard.
here.
Maybe I could ask Julia to do an opening for us, if that would be okay. Julia
Julia?
Sternberg Walker,
Yes, thank you, thank
put you on
you.
the spot. Thank you.
How
And,
long would you like?
And I would like to ask if anybody is not muted, please mute yourself so we won't have an echo, and you can unmute later on.
Just
How long?
3 minutes or so, maybe, Julia?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sean. So, friends gathered here, please settle into your chair and just feel your body in the chair. There's nothing else to do than be right here with each other in anticipation of learning from Dr. Jerry. Just pay attention to your breath. Center in easily, lightly, joyfully. If it's nighttime, feel the night. If it's morning, feel the sunshine. If it's cloudy, feel the clouds. Dissolve into where you are, your place, your land, your air, your sky. Reflect on our community, gathering all the lands, the water, and the skies that are represented here. Technology affirms the miracle of our interbeing. And can help catalyze the joy when we come together. I'd like to ask you each to think of one thing you're grateful for and send out a silent praise of gratitude. And all our little praises will lift up like doves and fly into our skies. When you're ready, come back. And thank you for allowing me to share with you.
Thank you, Julia. That was so beautiful. Thank you. So Shawan invited me to introduce Jerry, but Shawan, you did such a beautiful and heartful introduction. The only thing I would add is if you know Jerry, you love him. You can't help but love him. And he is full of wisdom and very, very special person as the founder and co-founder of MSR. Co-founder of JMSR, and we have Yochanan Altman with us, who is also the co-founder of JMSR. And Jerry's contributed so much in so many ways to MSR, to our community, and to the field. So if you're not muted, please mute. I also invite you to put your name and location in the chat so people can see where everyone is from. And we'll do, Jerry said, about 10 minutes of kind of seeding the conversation around research and the research questions we ask. It may be a little longer, and then we'll open it up. We can put you in small groups and then have a larger conversation. But welcome, we're glad you're here. And Jerry, I'm really, really glad you're here and still involved in MSR. So all the other thing, if you'd like, when Jerry is talking, is you can pin his picture so that if there is any other interruptions or background noise, he'll still stay the large view in your picture. And to do that, when you look at his picture on the right-hand side at the top, at least on a computer, I'm not sure on an iPad, there are 3 dots. And if you click on those 3 dots, one of the options is pin. And that will allow his picture to stay steady, and you can unpin him anytime you want. Jerry, it's all up over to you now.
So, okay. I just unmuted myself, so that's good.
That's good. I'm going to mute myself.
All right. Hello, everyone. I've been learning a lot about Zoom in the last year, and this is the first I heard about pinning, but okay. The last few months, I've gotten very involved with, I just got certified to do this quantum flow, which is a different thing, but along the way, I had to learn how to use Spotify, how to use Facebook, how to post on Facebook, how to make videos and record them, how to use Vimeo, all this stuff that I never heard of before. You know, I've been retired now, I think since 2000 and something. It's on the t-shirt that my students made for me the year I retired. So, and as you know, I was out of MSR for a while, and now I'm back in. It reminds me of the saying from The Godfather. What is it? Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. So I'm excited to be involved again. And what I wanted to do, I'm trying to figure out, maybe Judi can help. What's the best way for me to, because right now I see everybody. Is that a good thing, or should I just see myself? Should I pin myself? What do you think?
It depends on what makes you focused and present.
Okay.
If it's better for you to see yourself, you can actually pin your own picture.
Oh.
For some people, that's disconcerting to see themselves talk.
No, I think I'll leave everybody on here so I can see your reactions as we go.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, thank you. So I hope you can all see and hear me.
Jerry,
Yes.
there's a request to put some light on your face, if there's a way to,
Well,
so we can see you better.
okay, hold on.
Thank you, Miriam, for that request.
Is that better? Is that better?
Looks a little better to me.
Okay, because I don't know what else I could do. Oh, wait a minute.
Close your door, the background light will adjust a little bit.
Oh, turn out the background lighting?
If you close your door, Jared.
Okay, how's this? Is this help?
If you, this should be good.
Perfect.
That helps. That's a lot. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, that's another thing I just learned. So when I start my blog, as soon as I start my blog, that I don't even know what that is, but apparently I'm going to start one. Now I know how to do this. It's very nice. Okay, anyway, I was reflecting. I only want to talk for a few minutes and then get to having you discuss it with each other. But I was thinking about this. Right around the time when MSR started, is when it was only like a few months later that the attack on the World Trade Center happened. As I look back on it, it's very interesting. And the whole, before then, there was there seemed to be a lot of people that were interested in spirituality. And I was thinking back on when we first started, not just MSR, but before that, even just talking about people getting interested in talking about spirituality and management. And then came the attack on the World Trade Center, and it's like everything changed. And there was a lot of paranoia, and there was people didn't seem as interested, at least in in the world, in spirituality as they were before. And then we just finished 4 years with Donald Trump, and now we're kind of at a new beginning, kind of. It's almost like I'm feeling kind of hopeful, like, oh, well, maybe people are going to get interested again in this. Is this making any sense, what I'm saying? So that's one thing. The other thing that I've been noticing is that, well, I want to spend a couple of minutes just talking about how I got interested in it, because I have a feeling that, when people think about research questions, at least for me, a lot of it has to do with what's going on with me. So what's going on with me and how that influences what I feel like researching. And I know that I got interested in spirituality and organizations because of my own spiritual experiences. So I was having these experiences and trying to make sense of them. And that was basically it. I've been having transpersonal experiences going back to the late 1970s, starting in a T group that I was in back in 1976. Most of you don't know what a T group is anymore, but anyway. And then, having these experiences of just feeling connected, and I call them transpersonal experiences, of feeling connected with everything and everyone. And 1981, I learned transcendental meditation. That was the first meditation that I learned, and been doing all kinds of meditation since 1980. So for me, getting involved in or wanting to study spirituality came from wanting to make sense of my own experiences. But I mean, it goes back even before then, because I got interested. My degrees were not in management. My degrees were in psychology. And I got interested in psychology because I figured, well, I'm having all these problems, and majoring in psychology will help me figure out my problems. And then first thing I learned as soon as I started studying psychology was, oh no, psychology is the science of human behavior. We don't talk about our own problems. In fact, what we do is we distance ourselves from all that stuff and study rats running around in a cage. And that was my experience of psychology back then. I think it's sort of changed in recent years, where they're starting to talk about positive psychology. So, my interest in psychology then led to interest in groups. My interest in groups then led to interest in, okay, well, how does this work out in organizations? And I started off teaching in psychology and eventually switched to teaching in management. And so for me, it's always been a question of the research that I was interested in was always influenced by what was going on in my life. So since I see all of you on the screen here, nod your head. if you agree with this, or am I the only one who feels this way? I don't. Okay. The other thing that I discovered was that, you know, we're all part of the research institution, or however you want to put it. You know, getting our degrees puts us through a process where we learn to, in order to survive the process, first of getting the degree, then getting tenured, then, you know, work, then getting hired, and then getting tenured, seems to put us in a process where we have to shut down our own personal values and do what everybody else wants in order so we can jump through these hurdles. I mean, I've heard people say that if you wanted to, you know, don't do anything that you want to do until you get your dissertation. And then once you get your dissertation, well, hold off on doing what you really want to study until you get tenure. Okay, and then once you get tenure, well, then it depends on, well, maybe you want to wait until, you know, your associate professor. In other words, all these like barriers to working on your own personal things so that you can go through the hurdles of what everybody else wants. I'm seeing a parallel with this in terms of MSR wanting to get a division status. You know, okay, well, if we want to get division status, we better do what the academy wants us to do. And I already, at least in past years, there was the image in the academy that these MSR people are a bunch of flakes. What the hell are they talking about? They better talk about something related to business and management so they can, you know, get published in Academy Management journals so that they can get approval by the large organization. So now they'll make us a division. Nod your head if you follow again. If you guys follow what I'm saying. So there's always been this tension between what is it that I want to do, or well, what am I being drawn to do, and what are, you know, what is my soul telling me to do, and what is the external environment telling me to do. And somewhere in there gets the question, and that's why I wanted to raise. The question is, okay, what is raising the research question that we even want to study? You know, are we doing this, or am I? If I come up with a research project or a research question, is this because something that my soul is telling me to do? Is this something that I feel would be really meaningful? Or am I doing this because this is the best way to get through the dissertation, the best way to get tenure, whatever? So that's one of the questions, is like, what is it that is fueling my research question? Another piece of this is in terms of how are we going to analyze the data? So assuming, you know, we all know there's two types of things we can do. We can do a empirical study, or we can write a theoretical paper, you know. And I learned pretty early on that if you did an empirical study, it's going to get attacked all over the place. Doesn't matter what you do, it's going to get attacked, because someone's going to figure out a way to attack your methodology, attack your research, whatever. If you write a theoretical thing, then basically no one can attack it other than they can attack your ideas. I was really lucky that I was one of the first people writing about this stuff. So I basically wrote theoretical things. And theoretical things were, you know, much easier to get published. No one could attack your methodology and all this other stuff. I also, you know, I think want to raise the point that when you're doing any kind of a research project, I think you can manipulate the data to show whatever it is you want to show. That's my own personal feeling. Even like the more sophisticated the technical analysis, the easier it is to do it, like factor analysis and all that stuff, because you name the factors. So because no matter how sophisticated it is, we end up naming the factors, it ends up being basically very subjective, depending on what we want to do to name the factors. So all of this thing led me to the question, and this is why I wanted to raise it. What are, you know, it's the basic question. What are we doing and why are we doing it? And I think it's so easy to get caught up in, depending on what stage we're at in, you know, our academic careers, too easy to get caught up in, well, look, I got to get my dissertation. I got to get tenure. Now all the schools are AACSB pretty much. So It used to be when I first started teaching, once you got tenured, that was pretty much it. All right, we're tenured, now you just, now with AACSB, you got to publish, it seems this day like you need an article a month or something. And so, or, you need to keep publishing. And because you need to keep publishing, you have to figure out what is it I'm going to publish? What's the easiest way to publish stuff? I remember, I think it was almost 20 years ago, there was a thing that people were taking the same database and using it like 30 times. And then it was people complaining, well, how can you do this? This is awful. How can you keep doing the same database 30 times? Or how can you cite yourself over and over again? All that kind of stuff. And in the middle of all this, got lost the real basic question, why am I doing this in the first place? And so I wanted to raise that question. Yes, why are we doing this in the first? Why are we doing this research? What is the reason behind it? What's causing me to do it? Is it coming from my soul, or is it coming from external pressures? What's the usefulness of the research? I mean, having been out of it for the last few years and looking back on it, part of me is very easy to say, what's that line from Ecclesiastes? Vanity, vanity, all is vanity, Or why am I doing this? Or what's the purpose? Or what have we actually accomplished? One other thing I always notice, and every so often people do those studies where they do they look at this. I'm blocking on where you do those studies like you review the research over 20 years. You know what I'm talking about? And in almost every case, when someone has looked at all those things and done those studies over 20 years, it almost always turns out that nothing was shown. Nothing was shown. And it seems like we keep doing the same stuff over and over again. Theory X, theory Y, and then theory X, theory Y turns into the latest version of that with, the whole thing with quality, which is still basically theory X, theory Y. And a lot of it still looks like Maslow's hierarchy going that far back, even though the studies on Maslow's hierarchy basically have never shown that from what I could see, none of the studies have ever proven Maslow's hierarchy, even though it's the one that makes the most sense. And I think everybody still agrees it's true. And so, the latest thing, quantum, again, I've gotten into quantum flow and that kind of stuff, but I just look at this stuff as like you go in a cycle. You do the thing, 10 years later, the same thing comes up again. 10 years later, the same thing up again. 10 years later, the same thing comes up again. It's always basically it's almost always theory X versus theory Y. Those people who are concerned for people versus those people who are concerned for production. And now look at the trend in MSR, is okay, if we're going to do this stuff, we got to show how it contributes to the bottom line. How does our research contribute to the bottom line? And can we show that spirituality will lead to more profits? And, people have talked about it. I know David Boji's talked about this for years, and looked at that because David is an interesting person, very interested in spirituality, but also critical theory. And I mean, it's true. I mean, it's very easy for spirituality or anything else to get hijacked by, okay, show me how this is going to lead to more profits. So those were the opening comments I wanted to make. And I hope you can all follow me. So Shaker, again, just do that or something if you follow where I'm going. And I wanted to start off with that. The other point I wanted to mention is, can we be seduced by the dark side? I just started watching The Mandalorian. I must be the last person to watch it or something. But I've been watching The Mandalorian. I don't, about Baby Yoda or whatever that thing. And, the whole Star Wars thing has been very interesting to me. The concept of it, I look at it as it's very easy to get seduced by our spiritual ego. I mean, there's such a thing as spiritual ego, and we can easily get into, boy, the stuff I'm doing is so meaningful. And that's because I'm such a spiritual person. So I'm a spiritual person doing really meaningful spiritual research, and just let our ego just get carried away with that. And between the pressures to publish, the pressures, to be accepted, and our own egos wanting to feel what great people we are because we're so spiritual. There's always, I think, the tension between what is going on with my soul versus how am I being led. And so those are the questions that I wanted to raise. And now,
yeah, thank you, Jerry. I've put all those questions in the chat so that when we go into breakout rooms, people can still see those questions. How many people would you like in the breakout room?
okay, how many people are on the call?
We have 31 people on the call.
And what's supposedly the best number for a group is 6 to 8, something
No,
like that.
not on Zoom, I don't think, because
Okay, what's the best thing on Zoom? Because I don't know.
oh, okay. I would say 4 or 5.
Okay, sounds good.
Neal just wrote 4 to 5.
Sounds good to me. I mean, I'm learning all about Zoom, right?
Danny Sandra has offered to co-host, and so Danny, could you put us in groups of 4 to 5? And let's see, given the time, I would say we could do 20 minutes because this is a 90-minute call, and that will give us plenty of time to come back in the large group and share what the groups have done. So in each group, please assign someone to take notes who can report back. And anybody have any other thoughts or instructions they'd like to ask before we go into our groups, or any questions? And let me change my view so I can see. Any questions from anybody? No, all right.
How many minutes?
20, right?
20.
20 minutes. All right.
20 minutes.
Are you ready?
Okay.
We're ready.
Okay, let's go.
20 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. And now I don't know what happens next.
You just hang on. You're going for a ride.
Okay. Oh, so I hit the join thing here, right? Join room.
Yeah, there'll be a sign saying, please join. He's just assigning everybody to rooms. Okay. Thank you, Danny. Are we all set in our room?
Yes, I think so.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. So we have Sadhna, Neha, and Sanya. Sadhna, you are mute. Oops, Sadhna disappeared.
All right.
All right.
Just mind that I need to leave around a little bit before 6. I have a client showing up, so but then Paul can take it over.
That's right. That'll work out just fine. And
Great,
we'll be done before you go, so you'll get a chance to talk in the big group or hear what the big group is saying.
All right.
So the first thing is, would someone like to take notes to report back for our group? Oh, scared Sonia away. Neha? Okay, I can go ahead and take notes.
Well, I can take notes, but then I probably won't have the time to share them. So,
but I can put you first in when we come back. There she is. Why don't you take notes and report out for our group, Danny, and then I'll have this group go first.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Judi. It's nice to meet you, Neha.
Same
Am I saying?
Meet you too. I was just trying to figure out where my headphones were.
Oh. And am I saying your name right?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the questions are in the chat. And the big question is, what are we doing in our research and why are we doing it? And what are you called to do in your research? What's the reason behind it? He also said, is it coming from my soul or from external pressures? And another major one is, what's the usefulness of it? What are we actually accomplishing? And then he had a second one that was, are we being seduced by the dark side? And he defined that as, is this about our spiritual ego, our research, you know, like I'm so spiritual, that's why I do what I do. So that's a lot of questions, but then maybe just to start things, I'll go. So I started doing research on spirituality in the workplace in 1992, when nobody that I could find except for one person, his name is Martin Root, was using words like spirituality and workplace together. And I was a brand new faculty member at a university. And one thought that I had was, I've got to find out, because I really felt on my spiritual path, I have to find out if this place will allow me to be my authentic self or not. And if they can't accept me for doing this kind of research, then God will have other plans for me, or the universe will guide me. And so I've just got to put it out there. And I was actually shocked to find that I had great support, not only within my university, but the media. In 1995, like major business magazines discovered the emergence of workplace spirituality, and I started getting interviewed by everybody, which made the university really happy, because the university was getting in magazines like US News and World Report and Fortune magazine and Tokyo Shimbun and London Sunday Times. And it's like this whole thing, like Jerry was talking about, it just erupted in academia and in practice around workplace spirituality. And so suddenly my work had huge support. But when I started it, there was no one supported it because they didn't know what it was. And I don't know, they just let me do it. And so I've always followed the path of my heart and not worried about my career. I just really have a sense that I'll be taken care of. And so I need to follow my path. I'm now retired in that I no longer work at a university, and I run my own company, and I'm really very involved in the MSR group. And so I'm now kind of on a new edge with my research, because in some ways I don't care about organizations or management anymore or business. I'm not sure that business is the leverage point for shifting consciousness on the planet. And I find myself, my edge now is wanting to understand what it takes to shift consciousness on the planet collectively. So like the macro system of transformation. I used to think it was business. It's a part of it. Yeah, go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, no, that's interesting that you say that you think it's not business anymore. You mean business in organizations, or the business is the way we do business?
I mean both.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what would be the shifting point according to you?
That's what I find myself exploring is, where is the leverage point? There's a lot of effort around individual transformation. So people having their own spiritual practices, and the theory behind that is when there's a critical mass of individuals who have shifted their consciousness, then all of humanity will take a leap. And that's been the philosophy for, it's from ancient times, but kind of more specifically in the academy, I think that's been the philosophy for 20 or 30 years, that it's individual transformation leads to systems transformation. And I think, again, that's an essential piece, just like business is an essential piece of the shift, but there's still something else. And I don't think business is the driver anymore. It might be climate change or social justice or something that's a movement that has a spiritual center to it. It and it might be the Aquarian conspiracy theory, which is,
Mhm.
I don't know if you're familiar with that, but a woman named Marilyn Ferguson wrote a book in the 60s or 70s called Aquarian Conspiracy. Her theory of change is when you have small groups of social activists, so there might be women's rights, and then there might be social climate change, and there might be Black Lives Matter. And when they all start to hook up with each other and support each other, then the shift of consciousness lifts. So it's a network of networks. So anyway, my point is that's what I'm called to study now, and it's actually outside the bounds of MSR, and yet I'm deeply embedded in MSR. So it's a dilemma of, do I fit? Just like I didn't know if I fit in the university in a business school. Now, I ask myself, do I fit with my crazy stuff around global consciousness?
Mhm.
So that's what's going on for me.
Thank you. Mia?
Yeah, sure. I can go now. Thanks, Judi, for sharing that. And I'm sorry if I missed your inputs, Danny, because I joined late.
You didn't miss anything.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I can go, but in case if Danny would like to go first, and then I can follow him.
Well, on the question, why are we doing this? I'm a practitioner and only just finished my PhD just a couple of months ago. So I don't have,
Congratulations.
thanks. And I did this PhD not for, let's say, for my work, because I have a work, I have a job. It's just I had, let's say, to do this because I like to learn, I like to contribute. And I think this is what the driver was also the topic. It was very the topic of synchronization, entrainment, resonance, and that's a very interesting topic, and that got me hooked up, let's say, and drove me down the path. And so I'm in a position where I don't have to take, let's say, into account anybody, and I just walked my path. And luckily, I had a supervisor. I looked for a supervisor who gave me the space to do this. And in the end, they could see the path I was walking, and so in that sense, I got lucky with the people around me that were supporting or giving me the freedom and the liberty to do my thing. But of course, it's a PhD. You have to meet requirements. So in that sense, I think I followed kind of, I don't know, a sort of a destiny on that road. And I think I need to continue doing this, even if it's against the stream, even if there's no support yet. The support will definitely come, I think, for these topics.
Very interesting. Yeah, thank you, Judi, and thank you, Danny, for sharing your experiences related to that. So a little bit about myself. So I started my PhD in 2009, and it was in educational technology because I'm an educational technologist. So my PhD was basically in education, but like specialization was related to educational technology, and it was related to systems approach. And in that I decided to have spiritual component also. So we like I conducted a test on spiritual intelligence. So it was related to a comprehensive assessment, so which included their academic achievement to gauge their a normal intelligence, or we can say academic intelligence, then emotional intelligence, and then spiritual intelligence, because that is a kind of system, and our academic intelligence is just one subset. The larger subset is then emotional intelligence, and then the largest one is the spiritual intelligence. So that was my understanding, and based on that I designed my research. It was experimental, and I created one full program. And when I came up with that idea of PhD, and I wanted to connect all this physical knowledge with metaphysical knowledge. That was the idea behind that. I was very ambitious, very much enthusiastic, the way any PhD student would be, and I jumped into that. And then I started facing challenges. So it was a little bit challenging to get the synopsis approved at the very first place. And so I completed my PhD in India. And our university is very much focused on spiritual aspects and qualities and values. We give a lot of importance to secular practices, but practices such as mindfulness, meditation. So there was university support, but then you have to, like, while you are doing PhD, it has to get approval, from kind of like national bodies as well. So there it was a little bit challenging, and I understand, like, those challenges were, or the questions which I was asked were, I cannot say that those were not valid questions, because those questions were also valid, because they allowed me to explore more. And till date, I keep figuring out the answers for those questions which I was asked long time back, and I keep exploring for those answers, and I keep coming to know and to learn more related to those aspects. So what I'm trying to say is that yes, spirituality is a very, very comprehensive concept, and you need to have really, like, you need to be courageous to enter that field, I would say, if somebody is new and wants to enter this field. And yes, when I started, I had some preconceptions of mine, but then when I started on that journey, those conceptions would start getting developed further for anyone, I would say. And that was what happened with me as well. And the process itself taught me a lot about spirituality. And it was, I would say, like, it was a very, it was a kind of like really enriching experience, because if I had not taken that path, I won't have started understanding about spirituality the way I now try to find those answers. So yeah, when we are starting on this path, we do start with our own biases and preconceptions, and which is natural. But the trick here is, like, if we are open to learning, then we would certainly come across a lot of opportunities where we can learn a lot and develop more in this process. So yes, we have to start with some bases, and those bases are our preconceptions and ideas, and like the ones which we have developed based on cultural influences and our previous experiences. But then it's just a beginning of a journey, and we all are simply as learners here. But yes, having said all that, to summarize, I still feel that it was worthwhile to start that journey, because it has not just enabled me to learn more about spirituality, but also about life. And as I said, because I'm an educational technologist, so I see those principles working even in the field of technology. And that enables me to understand technology better, and to see how we can use it, how we can apply it, because everything is related to human beings. We cannot remove human interface. And if we have to work with human beings, we have to understand how spirituality affects all of us and connects all of us. So if we start moving on that path, then there's no end to learning. We can just keep going on learning and knowing better about ourselves, about each other, and about the world around us. So spirituality is not just about something metaphysical or something superpower or super energy or supreme power or just God or universe. It's more about all of us together in that process. So that's my understanding about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. Neha, have you written about spirituality and educational technology and how they're interconnected?
Hmm. So, not something like really specifically related to this topic, but yes, whenever like I'm writing things related to educational technology or systems, because my area of specialization is systems approach, I do touch on these issues, but not something really specifically related to that. That's a good idea, though.
Yeah, I would encourage you to do that because I've noticed in meetings like this and in online conferences, when people hold the intention ahead of time or do prayer or create the energy quantum field, and have an intention for a more loving, spiritual, connected meeting, it makes a difference. So there's spiritual practices in the Zoom technology that make the difference. And
Oh,
Judi, I'm going to interrupt you because we need to come back. It's time.
we're back.
Okay,
Yes, thank you.
good. I will close the rooms. I've already noticed, give notice to them. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Judi, I'm still formatting my list of tables and figures. I can't submit this dissertation with my. I'm watching YouTube videos. I'm
Oh,
over it. I'm so over it. I'm hoping today, so I
Oh.
can get a date for February and invite everyone because it'll be a Zoom.
wonderful. So you can have everybody come to your dissertation
Yeah,
defense?
it's a Zoom, so yes.
Did that?
So it's a party.
Yeah, Danny Sandra did that with us. He invited the MSR group to come attend, and it was special.
Okay, well, I will do it. Some of you are cited in my research anyway, so you may as well be there.
That's right. That'll be
You're
wonderful.
all in chapter 5, Judi. I'm gonna tell Jerry you're chapter 2 and 1.
Oh, golly.
And then I'm in a breakout room with Ian, my drops. So I'm going, oh my God, he's chapter 2.
Okay, I think we are all back.
Welcome back, Lisa Elliott is about to do her dissertation defense in a few weeks, and she was just saying that she's going to invite all of us because so many of us are actually in her dissertation, and she was saying who was in what chapter with great excitement. I love it. That's wonderful. So I would like to invite each group to report back on some key thoughts or themes that came in your group. And Danny needs to leave in just a few minutes, and he was in our group. So I'm going to ask Danny to go first, and then I'll just ask for volunteers and who goes next.
Okay, thank you, Judi. I think in our group with Nia and yourself, what came up is that in our, let's say, research path, we need to be courageous to face the challenges. And that courage takes us a step further. And in some point, it gives us opportunities also to learn on one side. But as Judi told her story, is that sometimes we need to be a bit patient for the environment around us to be ready. And I think that is something I also witnessed is sometimes with our own research and definitely in the area of spirituality, we are a bit, some teams or subjects or areas we are pioneering and the environment is just not ready to hear it. And once it's ready, there's an attraction to it. So I think we need to be courageous to walk our path. And that was a bit, let's say, the summary of what I've been told in our group. Judi, would you like to add something, or Neal?
Yeah, I think I want to underscore something that struck me that Neha said was that when we choose a topic, we might have biases and assumptions about what that topic means. And then as we delve into it, we actually learn personal things that are meaningful from our own research. Like particularly if the research is around spirituality, our research can help us grow spiritually. I don't know if I'm putting words in your mouth, Neha, but that was one thing I took away from what you said. Well, I think you're muted.
Yeah, certainly, Judi. You really explained it so well. That yes, we do start with our own preconceptions, but then it's a journey of learning, and we have to just keep learning. And if we are open to that, to learning from others, from the questions which we are asked, from the doubts which are put up in front of us, then it becomes a meaningful process. So having that flexibility and openness is something that is really required.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Judi. Thank you, Danny.
And Danny does need to go in a minute. Shawan just wrote a thank you note to you, Danny, and I also say thank you. Glad you're with us.
Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm also sorry, like I would also have to leave in a few minutes, but I'm so thankful that I got this opportunity to be here and to listen to Judi and to Sandra, and I will try to listen as much as I can for a few more minutes before I leave. Thank you so much, and my apologies.
We're glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So who would like to report out next? Just because I can't see everybody at once, maybe you just jump in and report for your group. Okay, Charlie, I did see your hand. Go ahead.
I'll just run through the thread of the conversations, and I'll skip names for no reason. We discussed in light of Jerry's kind of key points about person, calling, professionalism, and the tensions that are there around big questions. And we started off with a point of view about getting called into publishing edited texts as a focal point of professional scholarship, and that this is completely overlooked. You know, we're expected to do journals or top flight journals or whatever we are, but that this was an alternative approach that's overlooked, yet extremely influential in the long run. That was followed by a kind of shift into a different experience than what Jerry had described professionally, where a person's career path kind of naturally flowed into opportunities. Just a graced circumstance that doesn't happen to everybody. And then we switched from two academics, or a late to, well, kind of academics, to a practitioner who spoke about the energy and desire to be involved in ongoing processes that do have to do with academics. And then another point of view from a person who came into academics with profound experience as an HR manager, wondering about how ethics impacts organizational development and prospects. And that rather than at the moment, in terms of the stage that she or he was in, rather than feeling pressured to do research, the obligation was to be a consumer of research through teaching along with students, with perhaps later on a return to the burning questions. Again, we sort of wrapped it up with a sense of what is it that our measurements are for the big questions that consume us. And that if we allow ourselves to be dragged off, as Jerry described, into what others or institutions oblige, that we're kind of missing a range of opportunities, which I think, by way of ending point, the MSR crowd represents a great dose of variety of how people can find different successful niches. And I'll defer to anyone who in the group if I left anything out.
Sorry, Vanessa had her hand up.
Yeah, sorry, just to go next, because that is a nice bridge, the last point.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so good, thank you. So that is basically that was our last point that we ended with, on that light note of positive aspects of the world of academia, that there are loads of great researchers out there where we can collaborate together and find our niche, as the previous group so lovely put it. We started though with an anecdote, also very positive. I think we were a quite positive outlook kind of group. A very lovely anecdote that basically told us or that amplified that we have a choice to contribute in a positive and purposeful way, no matter how small that sandbox is that we currently sit in, or along in the process sit in. So it's about that choice that we have constantly. And also then one more point that I remember is that we have that we talked about research as a corrective, like a correcting power, basically, to maybe that pole of bottom line, that player who keeps asking the questions, keeps like, where does this come from? Or, well, maybe we need to look deeper into this. When the example was from AI and how the unconscious biases are being programmed basically into these artificial intelligences. And then, so to say, science having the responsibility and also the chance to be there as a question asker. So this, I think that was it, but please correct me or add if you like. Kathy, Johan, and Regina. You mute.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. What a wonderful conversation. Yeah, we're going to take a couple more, when all the groups have reported in, then we're going to open it for questions for Jerry. So, if you want to ask him things directly, be thinking about that. Neal?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to net out, again, not naming names, but we had also a broad group of people, those who are not into academics, getting into academics, been into academics, and been out of academics. So the whole range of opinions were there. And the perspective was, I think the common question was that, how do we become oneness? That was a kind of question came out from all of us. How do we become oneness? That's the way to leverage everybody's things and be a resource for saving the planet and saving our soul in terms of research process, saving the planet in terms of what we're leaving, saving our relationships, because relationships develop and people diverge. And how do we have certain ways of becoming one? So I would leave that as the one, Jerry, for you, sort of question that came up as the big one in response to what is it that resonates with people at different stages of their life, how to become oneness. And the question did come up, we are ultimately all oneness, but then sort of, are we oneness? Yes. And how do we become oneness? Anybody else wants to add, please?
I like the idea of to become one, to become the best of the other.
Oh, that's beautiful. That raises all of us.
That was one of our members' comments. I thought it was wonderful. The butterfly effect, but maybe others can speak to that.
Anyone else in that group want to speak to that?
Jim, you're on mute, please.
I was in that group, and what that came as a prayer in our conversation for me, in the context of the fellow who endowed my chair with his father. His father's passed away, is a Trump supporter. And he and I see the world very differently. And so rather than trying to convince him that he's wrong, I thought I would see what I could learn about becoming the best that he is.
Wow. That's beautiful, Jim. Thank you. Thank you, Julie, for bringing that up. All right, next group.
Yeah, so it was our group.
Thank you, Sadhna. Yes.
Yeah. So we were like Naveen, me, Chris, John. So although we started to introduce ourselves, and then what was that inner calling that brought us to this field of spirituality and to connect with MSR and all. So then we started talking, and the one thing was, one of the members said that he wanted to bring the best of from the Vedas of Indian culture and Indian religions to, you know, bring to the workplace and shape the behavior of people. And then mine work was on responsible leadership and how the culture of India and the Buddhism culture, which talks about the middle path, how it shapes their attitude to be responsible for some people, not for the other, for everyone. So it talks about it talks to avoid extreme attitude and to follow a middle path. So that was my calling, which brought me to this field of spirituality. And then Chris was there, so he was talking about his own personal experiences and how whole health of person, whether physical, mental and all, makes the person an effective leader, and how the interconnection and the connection with the people, planet and the surrounding, how it grows, you know, develop a better relationship. And then that's how Zion was, he was talking about how we can develop a more loving world. And at the end we came to the main question and then we got disconnected. So anybody from my group, if they want to add something, please.
That was wonderful, Sadhna. Thank you.
So we have themes of oneness and interconnectedness. That's beautiful. Thank you. And I think we have one more group. I'm not really sure, but want to make sure everyone gets each group gets a chance to report out.
Yes, we have. And I was with Jerry and Richard. And mostly what we talked about is trend, perhaps in management, spirituality and religion, and the thematical or conceptual trend going this way and that way. And then from long run, like as a meta-analysis, for example, can we see the trend, how it goes? Does it go linear way or spiral way? And can we even think about that way? And perhaps we just thought about that and discussed, and just time went away. That was my impression. But of course, Richard and Jerry can say more.
You want to add anything, Richard and Jerry?
Yoko, you have put it well. We were talking about the meta-analytics and building on what Jerry had said to us. Do you follow your soul or do you follow what gets you promoted?
What I take away from what you share too is that the sharing itself was outside of time. You were in a real zone of sacred space together. That's beautiful. Is there anybody else, any other group that has not shared? If so, jump in. Okay, I'm not hearing any, so that means we've covered all the groups, and I hope you found the connections and the conversation meaningful and deep. It sounds like it was for many of you. So now I want to turn it back over to Jerry and invite you to ask questions directly of Jerry or to reflect or put Jerry at the center of this conversation. So just jump in, or if you want, you can raise your hand. The way to raise your hand is on the bottom bar. There's a little circle that says reactions on the right-hand side, and in there you can raise hand, or just jump in and ask Jerry a question.
Yeah, before you start, I just thought, well, we've gone from, now all I have to do is answer, how do we all become one? And
Yeah, let's start there. You did have.
let's start with, yeah, how do we all, how do we all become one? Well, that's the question. Okay. Oh, I have the
Oh,
answer.
so,
Yeah.
Jerry,
Go ahead, Chris.
Jerry, I have a question for you that I
Yes.
hope may be of interest to everyone.
Good.
So this question about, is there a dark side to spirituality and religion research?
Yes.
I wondered if you could comment on that, and also comment on, what does it mean? What do we mean when we say a dark side? Is it sort of in a religious sense of good and evil? Or is there another way to think about it in terms of, for example, that by dark it means disconnected or incoherent, and the light is more about connectedness and oneness? Anyway, so I certainly don't want to answer the question I'm asking. That's the first sin of researchers. But
my
what are your
original
thoughts?
the dark side came from Star Wars, so that's where that came from. Like you have the dark side of the Force, and it's easy to be seduced by the dark side of the Force. But if you look at, I remember back when I was a doctor, it was years ago, looking at spiritual leaders, and they always seem to have a dark side. For example, how many spiritual teachers and spiritual leaders ended up having affairs with their students? There was a journal, it wasn't a journal, but it was called What is Enlightenment? It was years ago, and I remember someone wrote an article, and it was a woman who wrote an article and said, look, don't feel sorry for us. We know exactly what we're doing. We can pick the spiritual leader. We know how to get to him, and we know that sex is the way that we can seduce the spiritual leader. And I've thought about, I've been at, I remember I was at an ashram one time. Why I was there, I don't know, but somebody was telling me that the rule is celibacy, except of course for the leader who picks whoever he wants to bless them with, having sex with him. And you can look at any one, I don't want to mention specific ones, but almost all of them have been able to, got carried away with their own ego and managed to fall into the dark side. I mean, I can remember people who, over the years, I was really into several people like David R. Hawkins, who wrote Power versus Force. So I'll just use as an example. I really got into him for a while. We even went to Sedona, because he was there and all this stuff. And then I read a couple books that were written about him by one of his closest people who talked about his dark side, that he was an alcoholic, that whole system that he developed, through kinesiology, turned out he stole it from somebody else. And that's just one example. I mean, I can think of people, Jewish leaders like that, again, people that I really got into. What it showed me was that we're all human. So even these people that are so holy and so whatever, they all have their human sides to them. And so I wouldn't look at it as necessary. So that's what I meant by the idea of being seduced by the dark side. We all have it. It's more to be aware of it. And not just to think, oh, I'm so holy, I'm so pure, because that's the easiest way, I think, to fall into that. So I was meaning that more in spiritual terms, but also in terms of research, the way I see it is, and it's been mentioned by other people, it's very easy it's the difference between what am I being called to do and what am I being forced to do. So, I mean, I've just gone through a couple programs on my, programs on, reconnecting with your soul. I forget what it was called, soul remembrance or something. And so there's a difference between what am I really feeling a calling to do and what is the AECSB wanting me to do? What does the Academy of Management want me to do in order to become a division? What do I have to do in order to get tenure? What do I need to do to get past my dissertation committee? And there's always a tension between the two. I don't know if that answers your question, Chris.
Thank you.
Did it answer your question? I guess.
I think so. The only comment is that that's a very human-centric. So thank you. I got
what, anthropomorphic?
Yeah, anthropomorphic or human-centric.
Yes,
Sorry,
well,
I got stuck on the word. But I wonder if there's another side to lightness and darkness that's around the extent to which we are deeply connected to ourselves, connected to others, connected to nature.
oh, but that gets right. That gets back to what Neal was saying. Right? You know, the idea of I mean, the thing is, we're all one, and yet we're all. So, how to put it? We're all the ocean, but we're all individuals in the ocean. So yeah, we're in the ocean, and then we're individuals within the ocean, right? And
very wise, yeah.
And also look at it in terms of you know, Leonard Cohen when he talks, well, and he's just citing other people, but you know, when there's this whole thing in Kabbalah about the cracks, you know, the cracks let the light in, you know, so we're all one, and eventually we're going to return to the one, but we're also individuals within the one. And Neal, you're shaking your head, so I guess you follow what I'm saying. You know,
Yochanan has a question, so let's go to him, and then Neal, if you want to comment after that. Yochanan's had his hand up for a little while. Oh, yeah, I think you're muted.
Yeah, Yochanan, you have to unmute.
Yeah, sorry about it, Jerry. No, it's more a comment that occurred to me while you were talking, that there is a difference between the dark side, which would be, in your example, somebody who deliberately and consciously abuses his or her position as a leader, and you know, and being a human being. In other words, having the weaknesses of a human being. You see, there's a difference there.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was referring more to the first. No, when I think of it, I'm not thinking of somebody who deliberately is doing it. I'm thinking of somebody who gets seduced by it. So you end up doing it and you don't even realize you're doing it, which is very different than deliberately doing. But you know, while I'm at it, since you've been, I know you're very much into anti-Semitism and that kind of thing, right? How many people who started off not really being, you know, they just, well, I'm thinking of QAnon, maybe I'm connecting the two, but you think about QAnon, people are stuck at home, they got nothing to do, they start watching this stuff, next thing you know, they're believing in all this crazy stuff, you know, and I'm sure if you ask them, they think they're good people, you know, they don't mean, you know, and it's very easy. That's what I mean by seduction of it. No, I don't think most people do it because they plan to. It just happens. And it's always a question of, you know, being aware. It's more self-awareness.
Yeah. You're raising an important point, Jerry, and I agree with that. That the context in which we live and operate has dark ceilings in it, to which in certain contexts can be easily, you know, pop up. And that's how I look at anti-Semitism, the example that you brought, that, you know, the reason it's so much on the agenda right now is because basically the world is not a happy place, you know. And then you touch on to things that are in your tradition, in your history, in your upbringing, in your socialization, that represent a dark side, and you start playing around with that.
Yeah, but I think there's also just the ego itself. There's nothing wrong with the ego. Everybody has the ego, but it's just it's very easy to get carried away as to the stuff I'm doing is really important. When you know, it's important to me, so it must be important. And then, oh, look how many times I got cited, and look at all this stuff, and you know, and then what's that thing that says, congratulations, you just got cited 25 times? Like that means something. Now, you know, now, you know, that I've been out of it for 14 years, and we got into this a little in our suburb. It's like, why are we even doing this? What is it? What's the reason behind this? Are we really influencing management? No. Does the Academy of Management influence management? No, because that's why every so many years there's a new journal. Well, Academy of Management journal, nobody reads it. Let's do the Academy of Management theory. Well, nobody's reading that. Okay, well, in every 5-10 years, there's a new thing the Academy of Management puts out that's supposedly going to interest managers who don't read any of this stuff. So why are we doing this?
Jerry, there's a couple of more who wanted.
There are journals and art journals, Jerry, as you would know. For example, the Journal of American Spirituality and Religion.
Yeah, exactly. That
is,
people,
is,
you know.
is widely read, right?
Right.
Neal, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in, and then Naveen has her hand up. And
Okay, so thank you. I just am in total agreement with what Jerry said. I will just want or very two quick observations to add to that. One is this idea that we are all the good, the bad, the dark, and the light, and everything in between. You know, and we have the three gunas: the sattvic, the goodness, the rajasic, the passionate, and the darkness. And the more we can be on the good side more often, you know, that's what we can sort of strive for. I don't think it's 100% one thing or the other. So that element is to be there and sort of at some level just keep it under control. And the ego part is beautiful. You said, you know, spiritual ego, or, you know, that spiritual materialism, all that stuff. And Jiddu Krishnamurti said too, David Bohm, when David Bohm's theories were really rising, that go prove, because he said it's my conviction that separation, the feeling of separation of from everything, from the, you know, drop from the ocean, is the root cause of all the problems in the world. And I don't think David Bohm took him up on that, because I think the, you know, quantum physics wasn't able to sort of grapple with that at that point. But that's the kind of root oneness metaphor that comes from a lot of the Eastern religions. So that's, and I also want to say that this discussion of oneness itself is very bringing us to oneness. I'm feeling a lot of oneness and quite a joy in just, you know, being in this community. Thank you.
So delighted it came back to oneness. Okay, Naveen had his hand up. I apologize for saying her. I didn't know. Naveen, please.
Yeah. Thanks, Judi. Just to, you know, touch base on the darker side, Gerald mentioned about, you know, the leaders doing that mischievous act. What I would like to bring to notice is, you know, it's the religious and the spiritual, probably, you know, you say it in synonym, or, you know, I would say as it's poles apart. And more often what we see is in India, it's a daily news, you know, the religious leader doing all such mischievous act, and more often, you know, they target only such kind of activities. But if you look at spiritual leaders, that's the highest form. That's the highest form of, you know, mindfulness, intelligence, and you know, all that, starting at the fourth level, you know, PQ, IQ, EQ, and SQ. So I would say it's completely bright. I don't see anything darker if you're really a spiritual person, spiritual leader, because you have raised above all in terms of, you know, ruling out those darkness, the bad behaviors. So you're at the extreme end of the dark, which means, you know, you can only bring the bright. And yes, you know, it's more of, okay, the other side is religious. They do take undue advantage, and probably, you know, they do for the personal benefit, or, you know, for the community benefit is what, you know, they do all such, the darker side of behavior. But otherwise, I would say spirituality is completely on the brighter side, and that is the highest form, and any individual, or, you know, any human being can able to achieve. You know, that's always been associated with the God. You know, the person who has it's more like a godly person.
Yeah, well,
That's what I want to do, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, well, I have my own, I think that this is my own personal belief, that religions all started off with someone's spiritual experience. Someone had a spiritual experience, tried to explain it to other people who got it at whatever level, and it eventually got codified into a religion. And, you know, and within religions, you have the spiritual end on the one hand, and you have the, as I think Zaman Shachter used to call it, the, what do you call it? The constipated old men on the other. And so, you know, you have the people who actually have the spiritual experience. I remember I was watching, I was having a discussion with this Jesuit who I used to do a lot of work with at the university, at the University of Scranton. I said, I would like to show my students the scene in The Last Temptation of Christ when Christ is up there explaining it and everybody's standing around going, what the hell is he doing? He said, don't do that, don't do that. So I decided not to do it. But I mean, I think that's what happens. You know, it's very hard to have someone, when you have that kind of an experience, you can't explain it to someone else. And the attempt to explain it, in some cases, ends up being codified into a religion that can become very fundamentalist and the exact opposite of what the religion was, what the person was talking about. I don't want to mention specific religions, but I have a few in mind. Anyway.
Hey, Jerry, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for your involvement and questions. Jerry, what I'd like to do is give you like 2 minutes to summarize anything that you want to share with people or that you take away. And then I'll turn it over to Shawan, who's asked for 3 minutes to make some announcements and say goodbye to us. So over to you.
Okay, well, the first thing I wanted to say was the term that I wanted to use was meta-analysis. So what I was trying to say, you know, it's been a while since I've been into this stuff, but what I was saying is, and I think it's still true, a meta-analysis of all of the major management theories that have come up have basically shown that none of them have proven anything, which raises the question again, why are we even doing this stuff? And on the one hand, I think, okay, how do you explain? Well, maybe it's cognitive dissonance. How do you explain putting all these years into something unless it means something? So, but I've come to the conclusion that the main thing we do as management professors is influence our students. And I personally, I don't think the published research ends up meaning anything to anybody other than the AECSB, who gets to look at how many publications somebody has over the years. I also think that the theoretical stuff means a lot more than the empirical stuff. But I think it still comes down to what I wanted, you know, what I was saying before. It's the question of what are we being called to do versus what are people telling us to do. And, you know, the word vocation comes from the idea of being called to do something. Not to want to get too religious at the end here, but I mean, so what are we really being called to do? This is really the big question. And somebody also mentioned in our small group, Toyoka mentioned, well, what does this mean in terms of should we become a division or not? And my only comment, because I've had plenty to say, so you all know what I think about that, but it should be, what are we being called to do? Not as opposed to, well, you know, what's the trade-off? You know, why should we become a division? I'm not saying we should or we shouldn't. I know that's what that whole appreciative inquiry thing that's going to be next week is about. But I mean, you know, the question is, for at least us individually as researchers, what are we being called to do?
Thank you. You know, what I would summarize and take away from all that in terms of your advice, because it's a question, but there's advice in it, and that is that we as individuals should really be aligned with our soul, our vocation, our purpose. And you're also saying MSR should be aligned with our collective soul, our purpose, our mission, and not be driven by externals. So that's a powerful message and such a good reminder from someone who helped found the whole field of MSR and the Journal of JMSR and all the contributions you've made, Jerry. So I thank you so much. I know everyone thanks you. If you thank Jerry, you give him the little twinkles. And I want to turn it over to Shawan to bring us home.
Thank you, Judi. But of course, most important to thank Dr. Jerry Biberman. Let's just pause for 5 seconds so we thank him like we mean it, who made himself available, sitting on several decades of experience and the passion, now asking one of the most important questions: why are we doing what we're doing? Everything. Okay. So you got a good taste of this series offered by the Flamekeepers Committee. And just so you know, this is only the good beginning, because next month we will be hearing from Ian, who's present with us today, and he will give as another topic on the philosophy of inquiry systems. If it's somewhat more difficult to quantify the sense of a calling, because that has in touch with everything of our interior life, the source, but Ian gonna take us on a different route, a methodology really based on the philosophy of science. Okay, so it should be nice and easy, very complementary to this first one. We have more in the future. We will get to hear from Chris. We'll get to hear from so many other leaders. If we are the emerging scholar that you feel, oh, when are we going to hear from me? Because I have something to offer as well. No worry, we will provide opportunity for emerging scholar who's working on a dissertation or very early in your career to share what you are working on right now. And we want to make sure we have some senior leader there to be a good audience and provide feedback or mentorship as you go. So that's really, in this case, a monthly basis of offering, this build a sense of community with a clear focus on research, not just the research method, say why we're doing research the way we're doing right now. So at the very foundational level. I guess that's all I have to say. In this case, we don't have a finalized date for the February event yet, but I will be working with Ian to finalize that, and I will invite everybody back. Just so you know, if we have friends, we have so many people calling from India today, for example. If you have friends that you believe will be, benefit from this kind of conversation, please spread the news. And the town and the research committee has been very helpful sending out the information to. Feel free to, once again, to be a good voice of MSR. With all that being said, like I said, we just had the inauguration yesterday. Today is a new beginning. And so I wanna, Judi, you wanna a quick comments too?
Yes, just a quick comment that if you want to save the chat, go into the chat box, and on the bottom right are 3 dots, and there's a way there to save the chat, and it'll be downloaded to your computer. And we have recorded this, and we'll post it to somewhere in MSR Connect. And thank you very much, Shawan, for co-hosting this with me. It's a pleasure working with you and building this incredible community, and it is growing, and we do invite you all to send the word out and to be involved.
So my last word would be, because anyone who's with us right now, that you think, oh, I really have something I want to share with this community for feedback or for contribution, I'm going to send my email right here in the chat. Please reach out to say, I want to offer something. So write me an email. We will for sure get you on the table. With all this being said, good evening, good afternoon to all of you, and wish you a best remainder of the day. We will see you in February.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, someone. You take care, okay, buddy?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm waiting
Thank you
for
so much.
waiting for
Thank you.
email ID.
Thank you, Judi. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thanks again, Judi.